The Northern Territory Road Transport Association wants rapid COVID testing at state borders, suggesting antigen testing kits to be provided to drivers. The association's Chief Executive Officer, Louise Bilato, says it takes too long for drivers to receive COVID results in between the 3 tests they undertake each week. Drivers currently need to provide proof of a negative rapid test result that is no older than 72 hours, with some of the results not back within that time frame. Here's more on what she's got to say. Hi Louise, thank you so much for joining us here today. Would you please explain what sort of a pressure the delayed test results are putting on the truckies who are driving the most toughest unsealed roads in Australia at the moment?
It's actually having a lot of impact because they're required to have mandatory tests coming into the Territory at least every 7 days, and that those test results can't be older than 72 hours. So when they're waiting for at least 72 hours and sometimes 96 hours to actually get the test result, then they're having to actually test more regularly. So they're having to take time away from work, go to a hospital or to another facility to actually get a test done, and then wait for that test result to end up on their phone. And so it's very demanding, and it's adding a whole layer of extra stress, especially trying to actually schedule and to meet freight requirements as well.
And what sort of an impact is that having on their freight requirements? By how much is that setting them back by? And how is this impacting them?
It depends where they're getting the tests done. So that's the concern in the Northern Territory, because those people that require tests those pathology test results have to go elsewhere to be completed. And because truck drivers are doing tests for compliance purposes, obviously what gets pushed up the triage and the order of priority are those that are being tested to determine whether they actually got are COVID positive.
Yeah. And is this a case just over the last few weeks or the last few months?
The last few months it's become significantly more problematic. So compliance testing was implemented across the Territory borders in November last year as part of the National Freight Protocol. And so operators are very familiar with that, but they were getting test results within usually 24 hours previously. So they knew where they needed to be in that 7-day working routine to get tested, whether it was in Kununurra or in Broome or in Mount Isa or in Port Augusta. Whereas now, because they're waiting for test results to come through, they're essentially having to do a lot more testing.
And how many have been impacted so far? How many have been out of work because of the delayed results? Do you know? Is there a figure to it?
What part of the challenge has also been for our operators internally in the Northern Territory, who are now, for example, going out to mine sites, and these are Territory truck drivers who are not crossing borders, who are no risk essentially because they're permanently based within the Northern Territory. But a number of mines have now implemented testing that's no older than 72 hours. And so that's significantly impacting on our internal transport operators because, again, as you said, some of the toughest and hardest roads in Australia, they're actually having to take days to get out to a mine site, but still having to work within that 72-hour time limit. So if they've got to a mine and their 72 hours is expired, they're required to not be on site. They're required to actually go and get another test done somewhere and then front up at that mine site, or wait at the mine site until their test results comes in on their phone.
Right. Now, are you hoping for antigen testing kits to be more readily available to these drivers on border access?
Yes, absolutely. So Western Australia has implemented already at their two borders a policy that if a truck driver has had demonstrated that they've actually had a test, but their result hasn't come in, so they're waiting for it, then they will test them with a rapid antigen testing kit at the border.
Yeah.
Then make a determination. So if that rapid test result came back positive, obviously they would be taking proactive steps there and then to wait for the PCR test, which is, obviously a more accurate measure. But it is a risk mitigation measure, and it does allow the authorities to feel confident that whilst that person's waiting for the test result to come through, they've had the test, it was for compliance purposes, and then that truck driver can continue on their way. They might be instructed to, at their next destination, to, if the PCR test result hasn't come in, to test again, because it might have been lost, whatever, but at least it's not holding up that truck driver or forcing them to travel back, and it could be hundreds and hundreds of kilometres to a hospital or a site where they can actually get tested.
Yeah. Now, Louise, what sort of a burden on their mental health is this current situation having on these drivers?
Well, that's what we've been trying to explain to authorities. The road transport industry has stood up since March last year and has complied with really comprehensive COVID management plans. Those were put in place by the road transport industry ahead of most other industry groups, and dealing with road houses, self-isolating, isolating in their trucks when they're not unloading or loading. So they've been restricted in their work practices to try and not be the spreader, and we've seen a few incursions with this Delta variant, but for the most part, the road transport industry has been phenomenal in their conscientious commitment to not spread the virus. And so having these extra demands and to be, tested to have a negative test result that's no older than 72 hours does impose a lot of extra time, burden, but also responsibility. And then it's all the drama when they go in and out of the border or the work, the mine sites, to demonstrate that they are COVID-free.
Yeah.
And there would be very few, other than frontline health workers, who have had this burden imposed on them, like truck drivers. It's just phenomenal, and it's really been underreported just how committed the industry has been, and at every direction, chief health officer direction, because it's different in every state, they have stood up and accommodated and done what they can.
Okay. So with that being said then, Louise, what is your message to the governments? What would you like to convey?
Well, so certainly we're encouraging the use of rapid antigen testing at the borders, because it does add a layer of assurance. And, obviously truck drivers are trying to do everything possible to reduce that risk. Coming into the Northern Territory, we are acutely aware of the vulnerable populations that we have in the Northern Territory, the lower level of vaccination rates in some of those communities. And so it's imperative that everyone does their bit. And the road transport industry is being very committed to getting double vaccinations. There's from my surveys, there's been a very solid uptake. Yes, there's a small proportion that are still to get fully vaccinated, but we've got an industry that knows that they aren't going to be able to do their job unless they're fully vaccinated.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. Thank you for shedding light on this issue, and best of luck with everything going forward, and hopefully this will be resolved anytime soon.
Thank you very much, Ruza, for bringing attention to the industry and for the industry. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thanks, Louise. We'll chat soon. Cheers.